Real quick before we start, let me remind you guys of a couple of important things so you know how this channel works. First, make sure you hit the subscribe button to get daily videos from No Bullshit in your subscription feed. I also highly recommend you hit the bell button to get notifications too, since YouTube itself has already admitted that subscribing isn't enough. Not anymore. If you want the full experience and to get all the alerts and notifications, hit subscribe and click the bell for notifications. Thank you guys so much. And now on to today's video. Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about the new Far Cry game again. Last time, Far Cry 5 was confusing GameSpot because it wasn't portraying the conservatives as monsters. It would seem the game was a bit too political for the left-wingers. GameSpot being based in California, of course, a liberal hellhole, so apparently the game was a little too political for them. At least not the right kind of political. It wasn't the liberal, Marxist, lefty, communist political they would hope for. Basically, the GameSpot crew was triggered because one character said Obama-loving libtards, and there was another guy at GameSpot who couldn't even handle any conservative politics in it at all. He was tweaking out. The guy pretty much spoke about conservatives like they were the boogeyman.
Watching some footage with you guys with the guy running for Senate who's a quest giver.
Who's also Herc's dad.
Herc's dad.
The dude that said Obama-loving libtards.
If them Obama-loving libtards find out I can't look after my own property, I can kiss this Senate run goodbye.
And well, today, we've got quite the opposite. Now we've got another gaming journalist saying Far Cry 5 is not political enough. Let's take a look at this article from Polygon called Far Cry 5 doesn't want to offend anyone, so it will end up annoying everyone. Written by Ben Kuchera, it basically goes over how he's upset because Far Cry 5 doesn't go far enough to say something, even at the risk of offending someone. The irony here is that if Far Cry 5 did say something political, and that message didn't adhere exactly to Polygon's narrow view of the world, it would be Polygon blasting the game for saying the wrong things. You could really never win with these kinds of SJW people.
Have you ever heard about Russian bear hunting?
No.
Well, I just made it up just now.
Well.
And I also see this as the writer, Ben, and other SJWs complaining, they're setting their own expectations onto this game. And then when they're not met, because they weren't the creator of Ubisoft's intentions in the first place, well, people like this writer at Polygon can't stand that. That's why they write bullshit like, Far Cry 5 doesn't want to offend anyone. Bull fucking shit, man. This game has killer bear sidekicks, flamethrowers, and hypnotizing death cults. There's plenty of racy, insensitive, highly offensive stuff here, for sure. The excessive killing should be enough to offend most anyone.
Easy, pal. Wait.
What? So no, this game wasn't trying to be inoffensive at all. The reason this Polygon guy says this is because of the politics involved here. Let's face facts. Polygon and gaming journalism in general is run by SJW left-wingers. Meanwhile, Far Cry 5 and its game setting is conservative rural Montana. And since Ubisoft gave that right-wing part of America a fair portrayal and didn't make them monsters, Polygon is claiming they didn't want to offend anyone. And that's annoying, when it's really not.
Oh, there's no going back. He went in the propeller. He went oh god. Oh.
The problem here is SJWs and left-wingers heard about the setup for Far Cry 5 and they expected it to be a conservative killing simulator. They wanted evil, non-redeemable, redneck Republican stereotypes, who they could kill off with the same ease and lack of guilt as you would get from killing a video game zombie, a rad roach, or a flying turtle. Unfortunately for the left though, Ubisoft doesn't really make their Far Cry games that way. They never have in fact. Far Cry is known for being somewhat ambiguous with the sides they take. Far Cry 4 even gave the player multiple options and quest lines. Things could change depending on how many people you wanted to kill and how evil you wanted to play it. And this is why it's been such a successful franchise too. It gives the player the choice to not only decide on how to approach the missions, it also gives the player the choice on how to interpret the world.
Don't cuff him. I didn't even know the cuffing was coming up. He seems like an innocent man to me. Why would I even bother cuffing him?
And walk away.
Alright, fuck it, man. That sounds fine to me. I don't know why you have 2 bananas tattooed on your chest under your collarbones, though. It's kind of weird.
You put those cuffs on him, none of us get out of here alive.
Exactly. The Lord will smite us.
So be it.
Huh.
Even worse for Polygon is the fact that Far Cry's story begins to champion some conservatives after a while, particularly the ones who step up to fight off the evil cults in the game. And this appears to be just too far for the lefties though. They're so far gone they can't even imagine teaming up with conservatives in a video game world. And it really appears the reason this Ben guy says Far Cry 5 was trying not to offend was because of things like this. He should have said he thought it tried not to offend conservatives. And to Ben, the writer, that's the only reason in the world Ubisoft would have made these sympathetic conservative characters. When in actuality, in the real world, there are sympathetic, good, God-fearing people who are conservatives. We're not all monsters, believe me. Only some of us are.
The Imperial Senate will not sit still for this. When they hear you've attacked a...
How dare the press not believe me that I went after my mother with a hammer? He said he went after his mother with a hammer. He wanted to hit her on the head.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Then I tried to stab a friend of mine.
So that covers why Polygon thinks Far Cry 5 was too inoffensive. It was because it wasn't offensive enough to conservatives. Next, the article goes into more about how the game portrays the fanatics, the ones who get indoctrinated into the villain's cult. And well, I think these SJW gaming journalists are flying a little too close to the sun on this one. I think they identify with the fanatics more than they admit. It really seems like these SJWs and Polygon types are more similar to the game's fanatic villains in how they blindly follow their liberal leaders, defying logic and reason while they do it. And I think this is another reason these SJWs hate this game so much. It's because they're more similar to the villain than the heroes.
Dispatch?
Oh my God.
Everything is just fine here. No need to call anyone.
Yes, Father. Praise be to you.
Oh!
Lastly, Polygon talks about the Montana countryside being more of a cartoony background, rather than a real complex place, and I'll have to disagree again. I think those complexities are what this writer is balking at. The fact that some of these conservatives are layered characters with sympathetic backstories angers him. That's why he said the game was being too inoffensive after all. And again, Polygon is not really getting how the whole franchise of Far Cry works. I think what's confused them so much is this American setting, and the fact that Ubisoft threw in some Trump and Obama references too. These were clearly done to spice things up on the 5th entry to this series, but I think Polygon was expecting more. They were expecting more revolutionary changes to the Far Cry formula. In fact, you might even call what Ubisoft has done here as just some advertising gimmicks, but I wouldn't say that in a bad way. It works and was well done for me, but I think Polygon isn't handling it too well. They expected a whole political, anti-conservative, totally topical thing here, when really Far Cry 5 is more like the other games. It just threw in a few of these things to mix it up.
The rich will get what they want. The poor will lose what they need. The devil knows our fears. He told all his friends they'll block the sun with their lies.
And I'm totally okay with all of this. It's fine for Far Cry 5 to use some gimmicks, and it's fine they made this game more of the same fun, the same kind of stuff the other entries have had. Again, the biggest problem for these SJWs is they set their own expectations too high, or in the wrong places, and then when they're inevitably let down, they blame Ubisoft and Far Cry 5, when really they should be blaming themselves. In the end, the article does touch upon what the point of all this is. Briefly though, following the publication of our Far Cry 5 review, many fans have let Polygon know that they are comfortable ignoring the story, simply enjoying the setting and the many fun things to do in the game. I'm guessing they're going to have a really good time with Far Cry 5. After all, the game doesn't need this kind of loaded setup to get attention. Ubisoft Montreal put an exceptional amount of craft into the world of Hope County. Well, at least they're finally listening to the fans a bit, and they're getting to the point of this game, kinda. Far Cry 5 isn't about biased politics. It's not about being super topical and having biting criticism either. At the end of the day, this is a shooting game where you blow shit up and team up with bears and tigers to kill cult members. It's supposed to be a fun shooter, not a boring pro-SJW agenda-driven narrative. So yes, most players will largely ignore some of the story and enjoy the fighting and the scenery much more, as they should. And I reckon all these nasty lefty journals ought to start doing the same thing too. What do you guys think? Was Far Cry 5 trying to be too inoffensive? Or was it just not anti-Republican enough for Polygon's liking? And what do you think about these SJW gaming journalists and their expectations? I say it's their own damn fault for setting them so high and being let down eventually. They're the ones who expected different things on their own volition. Comment your thoughts and everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. See y'all next time. One more thing, I want to give a special thanks to these amazing Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. You guys went above and beyond the rest, and I love you so much for it. If anyone else wants to donate or join our Patreon crew, link in the description. Thanks again.